Welcome back to the Endless Party, everybody. We're so glad to have you here with us, as always. So, Meg, what are we discussing?
Well, today we're going to talk about one of the most influential books we read in the year of 2024.
It's by one of the most influential people in my life, but also I think in the lives of millions of others.
Yes, and without further ado, we are going to be talking about, drumroll, Jim Rohn's The Seasons of Life.
The Seasons of Life.
And I think before we get in, I think Elijah should talk a little bit about this Idaho farm boy who changed the world.
Really? So, among a million reasons why I love Jim Rohn, one of them is that we both came from potato farming Idaho.
Good old Idaho.
I received my education from Idaho, so I'm not that bright. But if
What?
Jim Rohn received his education from Idaho and he went on to do what he did, I would say there's hope for me.
Didn't you tell me his net worth is like $500
It was
million?
like 500. He's dead now, but it was like $500 million.
That's a significant amount of money, and he literally made it by just being a good dude and telling other people how to do the same.
Well, he also owned multiple companies.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
But it started because he was a good dude?
So he
I don't know anything about him.
So he started
Oh my
in
God.
sales, worked his way up, had a mentor of his own, started purchasing other companies, but then he realized that, like, one of the quotes I've actually used a lot in this podcast is, if you work on your job, you make a living. If you work on yourself, what does he say? You make a fortune. That's what it says. So if you work on your job, you make a living. You work on yourself, you make a fortune. And he really implemented that throughout his life. Like, one of the things that he says too is, like, he's like, buy books. Like, fill your entire library as much as you can. He's like, I have a library and it's full of books. He goes, I haven't read nearly enough of them. He goes, but I walk in there and I just feel smarter. And there's truth to that, right? Like, there's confidence. Like, when you go into a library, it's like, whew, knowledge.
That's true.
But so he just had a million different principles, and he really embodied them.
Yes. And although clearly I didn't know anything about his backstory, I promise you I did read the book, and I read it well.
Yeah, she did a good
And
job.
then this book was probably one of the biggest factors into us deciding to completely change our circumstances, to move, and to be where we are today. So really a lot of this can be attributed to Jim Rohn and this book.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
thank
Rohn.
you, Mr. Rohn. The first part of the book's
R.I.P., dude.
R.I.P. Jim. James? Is his first name
Jim.
James?
It's Jim.
It's just Jim. Okay. Guys, before I jump in, I just feel like I need to put this in there. I had a bad day today. But thankfully, I have a good husband.
No bad days.
And he helped me work through it. And, you know, maybe one day when I'm listening back to this, I just want to give a shout out to Elijah right here. There's no bad days around here. Why? Because, as him and I were discussing before this podcast, life comes and goes in seasons. And you can embrace each one of them.
Number one on the track, and number one
in your track,
hearts.
and number one in your hearts. Okay, all that to say, let's talk about this concept of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the book is organized into 4 different little categories. Pretty self-explanatory. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. And Jim Rohn likes to say that each cycle of life is relatable to one of the seasons that we
Are currently in.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool because when you are in because every season is going to have different characteristics, challenges, and opportunities. And so if you can kind of recognize where you are, what season you're in, then you can understand how to respond and what to do when you're, in each one.
Yeah. What does it say even in the Bible? You reap what you sow. And so he pulls even from that. He's a huge Bible goer. He pulls from the Bible all the time in all of his speeches. But I think that's actually where you got this idea for the seasons of life. is because he was so adamant about you reap what you sow. There's consequences to your actions, right? Or your inaction.
Probably because he was a farmer, huh?
So
Probably
yeah, he was
too.
a potato farmer.
He like worked the farms. He saw the
But
seasons.
yeah, he saw at the end, like, you cannot harvest what you do not plant, right? And what's cool is he goes into so many different analogies. The amount of analogies that he compares life to farming is actually like unreal.
That's what he does.
It's actually really impressive because he talks about, in order to harvest more ears of corn, this is Og Mandino quote.
In the fall.
Yeah, in order to harvest more ears of corn in the fall, I must plant more kernels in the spring. Right? And in order to sow or reap the seeds of success in the fall, I must plant more kernels of work in the spring. Mm-hmm. And so Jim Rohn talks about this endlessly throughout this book. But one of the things that I really like is that he says, like, farmers don't blame the rain. Farmers don't blame the dry season. Farmers don't blame the ground. They don't blame any of the things that they cannot control. At the end of the day, if they don't harvest, they blame only themselves because they cannot blame anything else. And he's like, so do not blame your environment. Do not blame the people that you're around. Do not blame your job. Do not blame. He's like, at the end of the day, you need to take ownership and responsibility because you're the only one to blame for where you are in your life. But it's cool because then he even goes further and he's like, but look at the season that you're in. And you can always, always, always bring it back and start over and start planting and like come full circle, if you will.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's the perfect leeway into talking about the first season, which is the spring. Mm-hmm. And the chapter's always called like the spring of life. So I think actually as I was going through this, I think this is the stage that I currently identify our lives in.
I agree.
I think we're in the spring.
It's planting phase.
We've been married for 4 years. We have 2 little friends, and right now we're currently planting the seeds to a lot of things.
We have 2 more on the way.
We do not
Meg's
have 2.
pregnant with twins again.
No, I'm not.
No, she's not. We're just playing.
But anyways, he explains the spring of life as the early stage, and what you're doing in this stage is you're planting all the seeds for your future successes. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of interesting because, like, as Elijah and I are in this phase, like, we're planting all these little tiny seeds that we're hoping one day will spring into these huge trees or bountiful harvests.
Yeah.
And the harvest is actually always on our mind as we are planting these seeds.
Yes.
And I think that's what's kind of cool about his farming analogy. Like, farmers plant seeds to reap a harvest eventually.
Yeah. Well, and they basically, what's so cool about this too, like I said, this analogy is like pretty foolproof. I guess that's why it's from the Bible, right? You reap what you sow. It makes sense. But what's even cooler is, like, farmers plant it and they expect it to grow. Right? They put in their effort, they put in work.
They're crazy committed
to
their harvest.
Yeah, they're crazy committed. But what's crazy is, like, you have this tiny little seed that you put into the ground, and then it just grows. Like, you don't see anything. You don't see the plant taking shape. You don't see the root system beginning to develop. You don't see any of this process until you see this tiny little sprout come up from the soil after weeks of putting in work and effort and time. I don't know if any of you have planted a garden, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to, like, plant and maintain. There's a million different things that you have to do. But what's also cool is, like, you even take it further again and recognize that, like, you will truly reap what you planted, right? If you plant corn, you're going to reap corn. If you plant beets, you're going to reap beets. Don't expect carrots when you planted cabbage.
Right.
And so in this planning stage of our life, that's one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast. That's one of the reasons that we're starting other companies, because we are looking.
It's the time to plant.
Yeah, we're looking long term at what we want to harvest at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so we always have in the back of our mind the goals and ambitions of the harvest that we want to reap. So what do I need to sow in order to have what I want to reap.
I kind of think the planting stage is one of the hardest. I don't know if it's one of the hardest seasons, but I think it takes a ton of work. I think it takes a lot of preparation.
Yes.
Like, think about how a farmer has to
Very
nurture the
intentional.
soil and get it to be the, I don't know a lot about farming, but get it to be the right whatever, so then he can plant the seeds and then bury the seeds and then water the seeds and then come up with a schedule of how he's going to nurture the seeds in the summer. But this all starts in the spring. And I think it kind of comes back to some of the things Jim Rohn says. He goes, commitment to excellence and persistence is the key to getting your harvest. And so to do this, it's going to require a lot of discipline, focus, and energy to achieve the results. And like Elijah was kind of saying, there's actually an affirmation I repeat to myself. It's another planting analogy. And every day I actually read this line. It's in my affirmation journal, and it says, you reap what you sow. And then in parentheses it says, the happy tadpole. And I've shared this story before because
Share it again.
So basically, who was it? Was it Og Mandino? No, it wasn't Og Mandino.
Zig Ziglar.
It was Zig Ziglar. That's who it was. Yes. Basically, okay, let me just start over. As a mom, I feel like one of the things I'm doing every day, especially with my little kids, is I'm planting seeds. And I'm going to be real, a lot of these seeds have not sprouted yet.
No.
But
don't see the results for ages.
But the fact of the matter is that every day I'm planting these seeds. And don't get me wrong, with children, you plant the same seed every single day. For example,
multiple times a day.
So, for example, one of the things that I've been trying to really teach our girls is all done. So that when they're finished eating, when they're finished with the task, we can communicate, hey, we're all done. And there's a little sign that goes with it too. So I think I have been saying the phrase all done for probably 9 months to a year at this point.
I'd say a year.
Probably a year. At this point. So they're almost 8, they're 16 months. I think I've been saying it since they're about 6 months, right? And I probably have said all done 5 times a day, every day for the last year. And Elijah has too. But today, it was so cute. So I'm sitting there, and one of the tasks the babies are not a fan of, but that has to get done, is I clip their nails. I do it once a week. It has to get done. I don't like their nails gnarly and full of dirt. I just think it's good. So I'm clipping Winnie's nails, and I think I've done 4 out of 10 fingers. And she goes, all done.
Yeah. And she's not.
She's not done.
She was done, but the task was not done.
That was the very first time
all
that
done.
she has ever said all done, because she wanted to be done with the task I was doing. And I was like, Eureka, like, this is such a big moment in our lives. I've been saying this for forever. And then as I said, no, we're not quite done yet, but we're almost there. And then I would move on to the next nail. She probably said all done how many times? Every nail. But I think, too, because it was more... we were really excited that she was saying all done. And all that to say, I think that's a really long story to say, like, the seeds you reap, the seeds you sow with your kids matter. And as you sow, so shall you reap. With Zig Ziglar, he was sowing seeds of basically negativity and just a mediocre, like, middle child, like, persona into his middle child. And that's what she was becoming. And he flipped it, and he started to tell her that she was smart and that she was a great person and all of these things. And suddenly she was no longer the middle child. She was a fantastic person. And so me as a mom, one of the things I try to do is I try to intentionally sow good seeds every day, because I want my kids to, I want to reap the harvest of having incredible children. But it takes a lot of persistence, I think, especially in parenthood. I haven't found anything in my life that takes more persistence than parenthood.
Nope. It has to be more intentional, more time-consuming, more effort, more patience, more everything. I think that's why it's so valuable. Yeah, I think parenthood is the epitome of planting seeds and reaping what you sow. It's an 18-year ordeal. It's a long thing. Yeah. It's really like... You're hoping to raise these upstanding kids, and then when they go off to the world, that they're upstanding in this rough world that we live in. That they don't blame their environment, that they don't blame the soil, that they don't blame the weather, that they just take ownership. And that's when you finally figure out if it was actually worth it.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, they also have agency by that point. They have agency at all points, but like they're no longer under your roof, right? So like if they make dumb decisions, what can you do? They're adults by that point.
For sure.
It's cool though. So I guess to encompass the fall of life. Is that what? No, the spring. Excuse me. Excuse me. We're on the spring. I skipped to the last season. To encompass the spring of life, just ask yourself, what are you sowing currently? To really figure out what you're going to reap. And a better question is, what do you want to reap? And really start to figure out, what do you need to sow in order to reap that in the future? You know, if you want your kids to be stellar, what do you need to do in order for them to be stellar? What do you need to do as a parent? If you want to lose 20 pounds, what do you need to do in order to lose 20 pounds? You know, take those necessary steps. But the spring leads into
the summer.
The summer. And everybody loves summer.
I'm going to say, summer used to be my favorite season, but I have a new favorite. It's crazy.
It's fall, isn't it?
I love fall. But let's get into summer, because summer is really close.
Summer's dope. I love summer.
Summer is all about that period of hard work and productivity. It's like you have taken your spring to prepare, and now it's time to work, and work really hard.
In my life, so I was a runner, and the summers were so hard because we were preparing for cross-country season. And cross-country was just a lot of mileage. But in addition to that, my dad owned a landscaping company. And instead of working on the crew, we just worked at his house, which was almost worse, I would say. My dad's a very blue-collar, hard-working individual. Taught me the value of work, and I admire that a lot. But summers were awful because it was just so much work. We would get up, go running, I don't even know how many miles, probably 6 to 8 miles. Then I would want to just take a nap. We'd then have to go work outside all day and then go run again that like afternoon. In the heat, and then be done by like 4 or 5.
So you're trashed every day.
We were just dead.
But you got Slurpees sometimes.
Me and my little brother would go to the track, do our workout, and then we would take way too long just so we didn't have to work again because we were just so tired.
And then go and get some Slurpees.
Yeah. But all that to say is the summer, in this analogy, is a time for work. It's a time for preparation for really the harvest in the fall. You know, it's that consistency, it's that discipline, it's weeding out that garden, it's making sure that it's watered frequently, it's making sure that no varmints get into it. And that's really part of it, you know. And so yeah, we're in the planting phase right now. I think we've been in the planting phase this whole year.
I think for kind of like spring summery kind of
Springer. Wait, what?
Kind of like sprummer. Like we're kind of in the spring, but we're partly in the summer. All I feel like we do is plant and work.
Almost in the summer.
Nowhere close to fall, but that's okay.
No.
We're gonna keep trying.
Fall is very, very, very in the distance.
Okay. That's okay.
That's fine.
I feel like along with the concepts of summer and hard work, I actually really enjoyed what you shared with me tonight about Alex Hormozy and how he was talking about how like hard work and how he hadn't felt like he had hit his potential. He hadn't tapped into his potential of hard work until he saw someone else working super hard. Or it was just a really good story, you know?
Yeah, so we were kind of discussing this because as a kid, I've shared this a million times, but as a kid, I was in like all the special classes. I'm pretty sure they thought I was like mentally challenged. I'm like next to positive.
He's not mentally challenged at all.
You might believe I am.
They think they really.
If you are, that's okay.
Really
a lot of people thought it.
They thought you were mentally challenged.
I don't know. But they treated me like I was.
Which is not okay. That's actually not funny that they thought that.
It's funny now.
It's only funny because, like, clearly you're not.
Right. I was a 4.0 student, graduated,
Like,
you know.
you're the least mentally challenged person I've met.
I think I'm pretty capable. Like I said, I got an education in Idaho, so that might have been part of it. But that to be said, so we were kind of talking about our childhoods and, like, what we experienced. So Meg was in, like, the super smart classes by, like, 5th grade, like the classes that were, like, for the superior kids.
No.
And I was in the class for the inferior kids. But we were really, like, talking about how we were compared to other people in our life and how Meg was compared to a certain individual. And because of that, like, she was like, oh, I wasn't as smart as her. I've never been as smart as her. And likewise with me, like, I was compared to other individuals and it was like, oh, I'd never be as smart as him, or I've never been as smart as him. But then it came back full circle because, like, athletically, I was unreal.
He was insane.
Like, I was crazy good at pretty much anything that I tried when it came to, like, physical exertion. Mm-hmm. Right?
Still is.
And so I came across this concept, and it was this idea that, for example, it was actually came from Alex Hormozy, and Alex Hormozy goes to his professor. He was taking another foreign language class, and he's like, languages just come easy to me. And his professor was like, wait a minute. He's like, are you bilingual? And he's like, yeah, my parents spoke 2 different languages. And he goes, no. It doesn't come easy to you. He goes, you just forgot all the hard work that you put into it as a kid. He goes, now it comes easy for you because the work that you've put in, like, is still giving you the benefits. And so it's the same with me. Like, the work that I put into learning how to wakeboard, learning how to ski, learning how to air chair, learning how to wrestle, learning how to run at a young age allowed me to be really good at all those things at an older age because of all the work I put in when I was little. And so the same is true of school. Like, these kids were so far ahead of me in school because they put in the work. You can still bridge that gap like I did. By 5th grade, I actually started to be top of my class. 6th grade, and then so on and so forth. I never became below an A average, right? I was a 4.0 student, I think, middle school on, right? But it wasn't because all of a sudden the work got easier. It's just because my capacity to do the work had increased. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. He was equipped for, the tasks because he'd put in the work to be equipped for them.
There's a quote by Og Mandino. I should look it up, but it's like, don't bless me with abilities to match my opportunities. Rather, bless me with opportunities so I may obtain the abilities necessary to accomplish them.
That's cool. And I feel like that's what the summer's all about.
I agree.
And one of the things you were also talking to me tonight, too, is just that I think you can also look towards others, and if you see them putting in crazy amounts of effort, know that, like, that's a great example of how much you can put in, too, if you want the results that they're getting. Yeah,
well, it's kind of this cool analogy, right? So I'm going to go back to distance running because it's what we know very, very well. So a lot of distance runners will use this same type of analogy, but you hit a wall a lot of the times.
You feel it.
You, like, literally hit a wall, and it feels like you cannot get past it. But if you continue to run in that pain threshold, eventually that wall breaks, and you get what's called your second wind, right? Mm-hmm. And what I've found is that's actually true of all aspects of life. It doesn't just apply to running or physical exercise or workouts at all. It applies to everything. So if you start grinding at work, whatever your profession is, and you hit a wall, just see for yourself how long it takes you to break past it. I mean, it's so easy to throw on YouTube and start scrolling through.
It's so easy.
Through reels and shorts. It's so easy to, instead of doing a podcast, throw on Netflix. It's so easy to always go choose what is easy instead of what is right. Mm-hmm. And I actually believe that if more people just broke past their wall they would have more financial success, they would have more creative success, and overall they would have more success as an individual.
I agree. I will say it is breaking through a wall, though.
It's hard. I say that, but it's not easy.
It's so worth it, and it's this feeling of euphoria when you hit it. I totally have before.
But it is hard.
The wall, it feels like you are trying to
run through cement. The wall feels like a physical wall.
Like you're running through cement.
I can't go any faster. Yeah. So it's hard. It takes effort, but just see how far you can go. Even start out with baby steps,
So take the summer of life to work really hard. Why? Because the harvest is coming, and that happens in the fall.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was this year. I was so in love with the fall season. I think we just enjoyed a gorgeous fall.
Idaho's been performing lately with the fall, and that's when we
delivered. It just delivered. It was so temperate. I could take the babies
Beautiful.
Out to run whenever I wanted.
It's like 60 degrees.
It was just temperate and
it's
gorgeous.
Like an Arizona fall.
And it was kind of crisp and anyways.
Crisp, cool mornings and evenings, but warmer afternoons.
It was nice. It was really nice. And I think fall is something all of us look forward to so much because it is the time of harvest. It's time to reap all the work of the spring and summer and to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Well, and when fall comes, that's actually when it asks, what did you plant in the spring? And you'll be able to see. You'll be able to discover for yourself what it is. It's also, just a kind of a cool analogy because, fall really is, golden.
Mm-hmm.
It is, like you said, it's crisp. It's literally golds and yellows and oranges and browns. And it's kind of ironic because it's that's the sign of champion. Mm-hmm. That's the sign of a winner. Mm-hmm. And so it's the opportunity for you to really reap what you have sowed.
Mm-hmm. It's also cool too because the fall is also a preparation for winter.
Yeah.
And I used to always just dread the winter, but I don't know, for some reason too, this year I just knew it was coming, and so I decided to just embrace the fall and also prepare for the winter in the sense that I was like, okay, I'm going to take all the good things I've learned in the summer and the spring and then implement those into my winter months, use my resources so that I can stay happy and positive. And something else I was going to say too is I think we're talking a lot about the physical, the tangible harvest of having a crop, right? But I think this can also be in relation to experiences too.
Yeah.
For example, I feel like when you've been working so hard to overcome a challenge and you've overcame it, fall is a fantastic time to be thankful that it's done, but also to look back on that experience and be like, what was great about that? What did I learn, and what do I want to keep and take into the winter and when I start this whole new season, And I think that's really cool. And the experience that I think we're at the point of fall and maybe even winter
in
with
certain
the
aspects of our life.
We just went through, and it's been cool because now we can talk about it in a sense of what have we learned and what are we never going to deviate from now that we've learned some new truths and implemented them into our lives,
Yeah. What's kind of cool about it is just the analogy, the seasons of life falls perfect in with whatever stage of life you're in, right? So spiritually, you could be in the fall. Physically, you could be in the summer.
Yes.
Right? Emotionally, you could be in the winter. All of these different things it's just you have to decide for yourself what season of life are you in business, in school, in relationships, in whatever, right? And so that's what's kind of cool is we are at different seasons of life in different aspects of our life.
Yes.
I think it's pretty cool. And the winter, which now we're going into, it's a sign of rest. It's a time for preparation again for the spring. It's never resting. I mean, it's kind of cool. I think if you really want success, start patterning your life after nature.
It's true.
It works. It works well.
It actually is going to work.
Yeah.
Moving into the season now of winter. Winter is a time of rest, reflection, and preparation for the next cycle of seasons. Challenges and hardships are common, but it's important to remember that they can lead to growth. These are all notes from the book. These are not my words. I just need to preface this. I'm reading my notes. I'm not going to take credit for his words.
No, it's true. Hardships are a necessity in life. They do lead to personal growth. And I feel like when you do go through hardships, it does feel like you're going through the winter.
It's bleak and cold.
It's hard.
There's no leaves on the trees.
No.
There's no warmth in the air.
No.
There's no sun in the sky.
You gotta go face it, You gotta bundle up and, take it on. But eventually, it leads full circle back into the spring. Just in time for you to keep sowing.
Just in time to sow up some seeds again.
Yeah, in essence, it's just this forever repeating cycle. You're never not going to be in one of these phases of your life. And maybe you are. Maybe you just decided that you want to remain in the winter of your life, and that's where you shall stay, which is very, very sad.
I don't
recommend that at all. But in order to go through these seasons of life, it's just like every diligent farmer, certain attributes are required. And I'm sure you could make a list of yourself what those attributes are. But we're going to go through some of them for you.
Yes. There are 4 principles that I feel like Jim Rohn
really hits the nail on the head
to help you navigate the seasons. The first one is self-discipline.
Yep.
That's a key trait to mastering each season.
Motivation will fade. It's really, really, really motivating to be like, man, this garden's going to be so great. It's going to go away when you have to get up early morning and water that garden.
And tend the garden and weed the garden.
That's when discipline steps in.
So develop self-discipline. Number 2 is personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to never stop learning, especially in winter.
Yeah.
Just because we're all cozy inside doesn't
It's your
mean
opportunity to pick up a book.
Pick up a book. Keep learning.
Yeah.
Number 3 is perspective, and that's understanding that every season is temporary and serves a purpose.
One of my favorite phrases is, and this too shall pass. It's from the Bible, which we pull from all the time. But everything passes. Good and bad, everything passes. And that's what makes the bad moments good and the good moments bad.
As much as we would all love to sit in the harvest time of fall, it's not good for us.
No.
And we have to jump back into the grind of the spring and summer
Work.
in order to feel the happiness and the pleasure of the fall, because it wouldn't be anything meaningful if we didn't just go through all the things to get there.
So if you're on your highest high, recognize that it passes. If you're on your lowest low, recognize that it passes.
And so that's why it's important to just be okay with what season you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I've been okay with actually the physical season of winter. I used to complain about winter probably every day.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't stand it. And this year,
It's a vibe, yo.
I've kind of been vibing.
Yeah.
Fall and winter? What? Ew. I never thought I'd say that. Okay. The last thing is patience and planning. And success isn't going to happen overnight. So that's why it's important that we need to be strategic in every season we're in and make the most of it.
Everything awesome takes time and effort.
Right.
Everything. So yeah, make the most of the time that you've been given.
And I might add, it'd be really unwise to plant your seeds in the winter.
Yes.
Or the fall. Or even the summer. So that's why you need to recognize where you are in your life.
They will die.
Yeah. That's why you have to recognize where you are in your life and make sure you're planning accordingly. For example, it would be ridiculous for me to expect B and Winnie to speak full sentences and have all the attributes that I'm looking for in their harvest right now when we're just in the spring.
100%.
And I think that's why I'm a better mom, because I'm like, look, we're at 16 months, so let's give it, let's set the expectations for the 16-month-year-old and enjoy just this time to plant the seeds and teach them some good things.
Yeah. So in short, this cycle is like the circle of life.
It is like the circle of life.
It continually repeats itself over and over and over.
Become in tune with these cycles, and it'll make your life a lot better.
Yeah. Follow nature's whatever.
Nature's ever-weaving thread.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's what we have for you, everybody. Go and read The Seasons of Life by Jim Rohn. It's a stellar book. I would recommend it to any and all people. And we probably will do another episode on this book.
We actually are, because there's some things that we'd like to share in this podcast, but I don't want to. I mean, there's some things I would like to share for our podcast, but not in the specific podcast episode, because it would be probably like 2 hours long.
Yes, 100%.
So
until next time, everybody, we appreciate you. We're glad you're here. And
until next time, peace.
Peace.